The Darkest Night, a 7.5 gram dry mushroom trip report sent in by a subscriber. A day prior, I did mushrooms for the first time in a hotel away from home. 2 grams in the form of chocolate edibles in the space of 1 hour. I heard chocolates are always made with dry mushrooms in order to last for shipments. I was vibing with an ex-meth addict of 10 years for hours outside and met a few Nigerians having a ballroom party of some kind. I found my emotions to be vulnerable and I felt I could see the true nature of people around me. When I returned to the room, I saw insects, sea creatures and mammals in paintings and the marble tile in the bathroom. I laughed and talked to myself in the mirror, saying how it's a scheme of the government to keep mushrooms illegal in order to keep people depressed and unawakened. I couldn't believe the tile, ceilings and blankets were moving. I was fascinated by this and was curious to try a higher dose the next day. I bought 2 4-gram chocolate bars after being in a sulky and angry mood due to many of my unresolved traumas and limiting beliefs about myself still pervading my mind. I wanted a blank slate. I wanted to change my thinking at whatever cost. I hate the way I see things, like I'm blind to what others are able to see, or perhaps I am blind to what I should be seeing. Ever since I got depression and schizoaffective disorder, I felt mushrooms were the only way out. Start of the trip. I needed novelty. I came home in a bitter mood and self-sabotaging thoughts that continually returned to me. With my mental disorder, I hear whispers directly into my head. It told me a couple of times, "You're in for a rude awakening." I ate one of the bars quite quickly and sat around and went on a walk as the sun was setting. I felt the come up, but the sensations weren't quite strong enough. T plus 1 hour. I went back out for a night walk and listened to some dark techno music, putting me into a morbid mindset. A guy came up behind me and we started talking about weed and mushrooms and how he broke free of it. He said he got schizoaffective too, and hears voices, and thought he even started COVID. "I thought I started COVID too," I replied, and we both laughed at such a crazy coincidence. We talked for a bit and decided to connect, and we each went back to our homes. T plus 2 hours. I truly felt this dosage wasn't enough. I really wanted to restart on a blank slate and reset my mind. I said to myself, fuck it, fuck this mindset, I'm fucking done with this shit. I started eating more and more of the second bar. By the time I got 1/2 of the way through, my intuition said stop, but I ignored it and proceeded to eat almost all of it. Right when I finished my last bite, warning signals were popping off in my head. My mind vividly thought of the scene from the movie Predator, where behind Arnold Schwarzenegger the green blood appears to drizzle down right behind him, and the Predator is right there. I sensed some entity or spirit behind me as well, and it felt sinister. I had a bad feeling about this, like an alarm on red alert was tripped on. Suddenly, I felt like I was integrating into the room around me. The walls were closing in on me. The floor was rising like water flooding into a cell. I felt myself being engulfed in my bed. Felt like I was falling apart. I perceived everything around me was engulfing me like a white blood cell eating some parasite. I thought I've just got to let this go. I've done this before on DXM. Stop resisting and go with it. Just go with the trip. But there was no going with it. The house I was in was suffocating me, and it felt like space was collapsing in around me. There was no way to trick my mind into thinking this was only my perception. The perception is reality and seems definite. I realised as I was becoming consumed by the environment, and there was no way for me to let go. I took too high of a dose too soon, and my mind wasn't ready. Panic was setting in, and a deep terror filled me. Like this was the way it always will be, and I'm doomed if I don't do something. It was after late at night, and there was no one I could talk to. I was on my own on this one. All I could think of was to throw on my shoes and run. I found my shoes as they were sinking into the tile like quicksand, put them on, stepped out of it and started running as fast as I could. I turned on some Dragon Ball Z music to strengthen my mindset, and it made the experience extremely intense. It was though some entity outside the simulation was trying to kill me. I felt if I didn't run, I would suffocate to death. Even when I was outside, I was in full panic mode and it wasn't stopping. The music didn't help, so I turned it off. Time was slowing down like being near the event horizon of a black hole. It seemed like as I ran, the pavement kept extending such that I was making no progress. Space squished around me, and such that the houses, vine-laced walls and trees were creating a tunnel around me. As I looked around, all I could see were different faces in every object in the night. I realised everything around me, even the pavement and grass, is sentient. Just like Terence McKenna said, there is sentience in everything. Now it hit me. Now I knew what he was talking about. Sprinting alone in the dark, creating this wormhole I was going through, as everything moved and shifted around me. As I made my way back home, I had to walk, and felt like I may be coming down from it, but no. This piano black night was just beginning to kick into overdrive. As soon as I got home to light a cigarette to calm myself down, it's like everything reactivated and I just couldn't calm down at all. I started sinking into the walkway in my house, and as I went back into the street it was churning like melted chocolate. I bolted again, with the pavement seemingly moving upward like climbing a rolling hill, and it felt like I was walking on water. I started running again to sweat it out somehow and get oxygen into my brain. I ran all the way across town for what seemed like forever. Part of the reason I didn't want to just chill was because if I risked not getting this out of my system, I could go back to a chronic psychotic episode I once had, where I would be hearing voices harassing and attacking me, seeing spectres, images, and writing on a screen appearing in my vision in front of me. I didn't want a chance at that happening again, so I greatly feared I would permatrip again. As I ran, I felt completely abandoned and alone. My footsteps reverberated, and it felt like I was going through hyperspace. It's so hard to describe the myopia of the despair that I felt. I ran to apologise to everyone in the physical and spiritual realm in an attempt to gain sympathy to break this chronic panic attack, if you could call it that. I called out to whatever may be out there, but nothing answered in return. I was all alone. I was convinced this is where it all ends and begins. I felt God has broken my soul and mind into a million pieces and abandoned me, and I am in this mental web of some kind. I felt the world is ending. I'm the last person left alive, and all of the living and dead are gone. It feels like the end of time itself, that I was where life ends. I feel like I'm falling apart. I have to somehow hold on to my mind. I have to somehow keep my soul. I realise my mind is my essence, and if I lose my essence, I will no longer exist. As I look around at everything around me, I feel this distorted perception of reality is permanent, and I'm never going to be the same again. I was convinced I was the only form of sentient life in the universe, and my sentience was waning. If I'm gone, there is no more life left. I'm it. The nightmare was not ending, and I needed to call an ambulance. I believed I would be in therapy for years, and it's time to just quit this fucking game right now. Will things always be this way now? A permanently broken mind and living in this eternal terror? I thought a neural bridge in my brain had snapped, and I was bound to have this new distorted perception of reality for good. My phone was dead. There was no one to call. I needed someone to talk to, so I ran home back across town to my dad who was asleep. I felt like it was time to get the paramedics. Now, he had never done a drug in his life, and he was furious when I woke him up. He told me to knock off this behaviour and take myself to the hospital or get to sleep. I didn't want to risk hospital bills or anything like that, so I decided to do some deep breathing and try to wait it out. But I thought I had entered a new permanent state of psychosis no matter how long I waited. It's only 1:42 AM. I thought it'd be 5 AM, but time had slowed down, so this strangely made sense. In fact, it seemed like this experience would never actually end. Shrooms are in the tryptamine family after all, along with DMT or DPT, which have the same effect of removing time from the equation. I closed my eyes and had closed-eye visuals of being in space, fireworks, ribbons of rivers passing by, and all kinds of indiscreet things I can't remember. Stepped outside and things were still moving around, but not as intensely. I lightly smoked a cig and paced back and forth constantly, hoping this won't be a perma-trip because I never want to risk a psychotic episode again. If I had to relive that, I know I couldn't handle it again. Eventually, I fell asleep under the undulating blanket and woke up feeling like I just made a trek through the Saharan desert. This was a death blow. I was profoundly broken and shaken, though miraculously, things were back to normal. But the problems I tried to escape from, and negative intrusive thoughts, came back even more powerfully upon awakening. I worked out as hard as I could that morning to get endorphins pumping, and things were changing as the day progressed. I felt this humility that I couldn't explain. It broke me completely, making all of my negative thoughts meaningless compared to this living nightmare I'd just gone through. I felt cracked open and broken. Have I been reset? Something reset. Something I can't quite put my finger on. People seem like NPCs in a game to me. As I pan around, there's a new side to life. The insights I gained from this trip tell me a few things. One of them is how I think life began. I contemplated this as I thought I was the last person left in the universe. And if I was the last person, and I had disintegrated, there would be nothing but chaos. Nothing but disorganized matter floating around in the very beginning of time. When people say that God is the Alpha and Omega, the beginning and end, I dissected it further and realised there cannot be a fully constructed sentient life form as the very first thing to exist. The very first thing to exist would either be nothing or chaotic, incoherent matter. And what does that matter do over time? It coalesces. Opposites like puzzle pieces coalesce and build, and evolve according to physical and metaphysical laws. I don't believe these laws are created, but rather a description of how objects in reality interact, but they aren't created by anyone. This chaos at the beginning must have coalesced over time to form further and more evolved sentience. Shrooms teach you that there is sentience in everything around us. Evolution is the constant. I gained this insight when I felt total aloneness and despair of an incomprehensible order. This is where love is born, or rather the positive spiritual bonds people form between each other, as well as the bonds one particle of matter forms with one another. In this aloneness, I, or all other matter, reaches out to another form of sentience to create a bond holding them together and building up. Love is born from despair. But then again, if we are in a simulation, where we can think of everything alive as activated rather than alive, that would be more realistic. When code is run on a computer, the results of the code are processed and shown. The lines of code are the laws, and someone writes this code outside of the simulation, outside of the screen we can't see through, at least those of us who haven't been able to see through it. So maybe, mathematical law could be created and descriptive of reality, but what comes before that? Maybe the laws come from whoever or whatever sentience is in ultimate authority over anything else. But why did I have this experience? I wanted a blank slate of beliefs to form for myself and start anew from, but I think I partially got what I asked for. The beliefs that were broken are the idea that our lives are not the cage we imagine them to be. We can become crowded with all of these limiting beliefs people want to shove into your head, but beliefs are only due to our current perception of reality. Now that I unlocked a perception that everything, indeed everything, is alive around us, my perception has changed, and therefore my beliefs. I came to notice that people are all part of nature, and usually when you're winning in life and expanding past your current potential, the universe supports you and the people that are a part of nature will react more warmly to you. When you're down, nature usually has a way of reprimanding you through any natural mechanism. Ultimately, our perception of reality may not be the correct view on reality. Though I perceived myself to be swallowed up by my environment, it was still a stagnant sidewalk, a stagnant house, a stagnant picture. Our perception must constantly evolve in order to find out what is real and what is not. I realised many of my negative thoughts and beliefs I wanted to get rid of before the trip were not even the reality at all. And I hope this helps people who are trapped in depression or in their mind. That it's only the nightmare your mind is creating, and it's just a bad trip that will eventually pass. While living in a shifting nightmare, it could just be a still room you're standing in, just as you're living through a tempest of thoughts. The reality of what thoughts are true could be completely different than what our clouded judgment says about ourselves.